Tilder! Hey, what's going on everybody? Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker here, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. So today we're going to figure out which lavalier mic should you pair up with your Picomic 2 Pro. Well, the TLDR is, if you don't want to EQ your voice whatsoever, just have everything sound good out of the box, get the Sony for $20 to $30. But if you want the fullest range of your voice, as well as the ability to EQ later, then you should look at the Deity w.Lav for $100. Here are some examples. All right, you're currently listening to the built-in microphone. Okay, so you're now listening to the Sony lavalier mic. You're now listening to the Deity w.Lav. Okay, so you're now listening to the Sony lavalier mic. All right, you're currently listening to the built-in microphone. You're now listening to the built-in lavalier microphone. You're now listening to the Sony lavalier mic, to the outdoor test for the Deity w.Lav. You're now listening to the Sony lavalier mic. You're now listening to the built-in lavalier microphone. You done messed up, Aaron! 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 If that's all you needed, then I will see you guys later. Otherwise, stick around for the full suite of tests, reasons, and maybe you'll learn a thing or two. All right, so the lavalier mics that I am comparing are going to be in the budget range of $20 to $100, nothing crazy professional like $500. Now, I might not have the mic that you have heard about or that you personally like the Purple Panda. Some people have talked about that lavalier mic, and the reason that I'm not using it is because it's specifically more made for smartphones. Now, yes, you can have an adapter to make it all work, but I don't like the idea of plugging an adapter in between a lavalier mic and the transmitter. That's another point of failure, and it also just makes the overall setup clunky. So these are specifically made for wireless audio kits or just dictation mics, because some of them actually are just dictation mics. So here's who we got. We got the Sony silver and black version. Now the silver version, if you can still find some old stock of it, is $20. Otherwise, the black version is just a newer branding. It's $30, and it literally does not sound different at all. So see if you can find the silver version. Otherwise, the black version will do you just fine. Next up, we have the Olympus dictation mic at approximately $35. And we did have the JK mic attempt. Now, it did work, but radio frequency happens if you're too far away from the receiver, and by too far, I mean like 6 feet. Down to 0, because it seems to be more sensitive. Fan noise is now on. So unfortunately, I had to exit out of this comparison, which is unfortunate. Next up, we have the Rode Lavalier Go that can be found anywhere from $70 to $80, depending on where you buy it. And then last but not least, for $100, we had the semi-professional Deity w.Lav. So the first test up is we're going to see how it sounds in this non-sound treated room between the built-in mic and the lavalier mic. So here we go. All right, you're currently listening to the built-in microphone on the Picomic 2 Pro. Again, this is a non-sound treated room. None of the lights that I'm currently using actually has any fans in it, so you are listening to the pure ambient sound in the next test when I stay silent. Okay, so you're now listening to the Sony lavalier mic that is attached to the Picomic 2 Pro. And again, this is in a non-sound treated room. There is no fans on any of the lights that are in here, so you are listening to the clear ambient sound in the next test. And as a notice, I did have to bump up the mic to +6 just because it needs a little bit more sensitivity. Okay, so you're now listening to the Olympus lavalier microphone plugged into the Picomic 2 Pro. Again, this is a non-sound treated room. The lights have no fans in it, so what you're listening to is the pure ambient sound in the next test. And just like the Sony, I had to bump up the mic's preamp +6 just to get the right levels. You're now listening to the Rode Lavalier Go. Again, this is a non-sound treated room. None of the lights here have any fans in them. So on the next test, you are listening to the pure ambience of the room. And for this one, the mic preamp on the Picomic 2 had to go to +3 to get the right levels. You're now listening to the Deity w.Lav, and again, this is in a non-sound treated room. None of the lights here have any sort of fans in them, so in the next test, you are listening to the pure ambience of this microphone. And for reference, the mic level on the Pico Stream had to be at +3. Now I'm going to play all these tests in quick succession so you can really hear the difference between the microphones. All right, you're currently listening to the built-in microphone. Okay, so you're now listening to the Sony Lavalier mic. Okay, so you're now listening to the Olympus Lavalier microphone. You're now listening to the Rode Lavalier Go. You're now listening to the Deity w.Lav. You're now listening to the Rode Lavalier Go. Okay, so you're now listening to the Olympus Lavalier microphone. Okay, so you're now listening to the Sony Lavalier mic. All right, you're currently listening to the built-in microphone. All right, this next test is me just not saying anything, and let's hear the ambient sound to see what kind of noise floor are we getting from each microphone going through the Picomic 2 Pro. For this next one, it's kind of like a sound rejection test, but basically I turned on a tiny little fan, set it about 8 feet away, just to see, you know, how do these lavalier mics pick up little external sounds like that. Next up, we have the outdoor test. So when you're outdoors, you're in a much vast situation. There's wind, there's ambient sounds. So it could change how the capsules capture your voice in that setting. So here is those tests. You're now listening to the built-in lavalier microphone on the Picomic 2 Pro. I do have the wind muff on because it is kind of a windy day outside. There's a lawn mowing team as well as just general traffic. So when we go to the ambient sound test, just know that that is what I'm dealing with in these situations. You're now listening to the Sony lavalier mic in an outdoor setting. It is a little bit breezy. There's a lawn mowing team out in the distance, and I think an ambulance which just went by. So just know that when we go to the ambient sound test only, it's not all equal, but at the same time, it'll kind of give you an idea of what these mics sound like. All right, so now you're listening to the Olympus lavalier mic in an outdoor setting. Now it is a little bit breezy today, and now the lawn mowing team has just gone back on, as well as an ambulance in the distance. So when you're listening to the ambient sound test, just know it's not all equal. It just really depends on the moment that I happen to be recording in. You're now listening to the Rode Lavalier Go in an outdoor setting. There is some breeze going on. There's a lawn mowing team out in a distance, general traffic noise whatsoever. And so when we get to the ambient test, just know I am combating a whole bunch of different sounds. All right, guys, so you're now listening to the outdoor test for the Deity w.Lav going into the Picomic 2. It is a little bit of a breezy day. There's general traffic and lawn mowing teams, and there's a highway farther back over that way. So when I get to the ambient test, just know that it might sound a little different. Same thing as before, I'm gonna play this in very quick succession so you can really hear the difference between each microphone. You're now listening to the built-in lavalier microphone. You're now listening to the Sony lavalier mic. All right, so now you're listening to the Olympus lavalier mic. You're now listening to the Rode Lavalier Go, to the outdoor test for the Deity w.Lav. You're now listening to the Rode Lavalier Go. All right, so now you're listening to the Olympus lavalier mic. You're now listening to the Sony lavalier mic. You're now listening to the built-in lavalier microphone. Next up, let's hear the ambience of being outdoors. Now, this isn't necessarily fair because when you're outdoors, a bird could be chirping nearby, and then in another test, it's not. So just know that it's not all equal. You can't really get it to be standardized. So take whatever you hear with a grain of salt. Last but not least, I think everyone's favorite test is the screaming test. Now, Picomic has a really good limiter in it to try to not clip you out, but you could theoretically still clip at the capsule level. So let's see which microphones will clip out on the capsule level and which ones can be saved by the Picomic's own limiter. You done messed up, Aaron! 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 So what's the bottom line here? Which lavalier mic do I feel is the best bet? Well, surprisingly enough, the Sony does a really good job. It seems to have always done a good job so far in my tests. So for $20 to $30, you're getting a really nice voice that's already kind of been EQ'd. For my specific voice, it sounds like a radio broadcaster, which is not a bad thing. It's, you know, it's got some rumble, but it's got some clarity from the nasal area, the highs, and it's just overall a nice crisp sound. When it comes to the Olympus microphone, the mids seem to be more prominent, which makes the kind of a muffled sound as you're talking. Now, it could be good for your voice, but for my voice, does not sound great, where I have a lot of lows and a lot of highs. So for me, not so good. Next up, we have the Rode Lavalier Go. This sounds decent, but for some odd reason, I still hear some crisp sound coming from it, and I don't know where it's coming from necessarily. If you didn't really hear it, then that just could be me. But for me, I feel like when you move on to the Deity for an extra $20, you kind of hear that more full bass come back, and it just sounds clean. That's all I can really say. It sounds clean. Now, does it make my voice sound good like the Sony out of the gate? Well, it depends on what you're using it for, but because you're starting off with a nice flat sound, you can start pulling EQ and get, you know, you can crispen my voice if you want to. So basically, you're kind of, my recommendation is at the opposite ends. The cheap one sounds great if you don't want to do anything to it. Just sounds good out of the box, in my opinion. But if you need something that's more hearty and it doesn't like clip out on the highs when you're screaming, the Deity does a really good job coming in at $100. And hey, that is it for this video, everybody. Again, if this video has made all the influence in your purchasing decisions, I do have some purchase links down below. Again, this costs nothing extra to you. It just gives me a little compensation so I can continue making videos like this for you. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave it down below. I will get to them as fast as I can. Or maybe there's some new lavalier mics specifically made for wireless audio kits that I'm not aware of. Let me know and I can bring them in to my whole test bed. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.